Try to get through this. It's a very difficult time for the Chicago Police Department. We're heartbroken. Unfortunately, we're delivering the very tragic news that one of our own duty Chicago police officer has been fatally shot this evening. Our officer, who is deceased, was shot multiple times. And as you know, here at Sinai Hospital, where he succumbed to his injuries. I ask that this city cover this officer's family. This is a family of public servants, and as you can imagine, they are taking this tragedy very, very hard. This young officer, who had right at 5 years on this department, had a bright future ahead of him. And this is something that no family should have to face. This evening, the officer's partner, all the responding officers, the officers in the 8th District, every officer in this police department, and for that matter, every officer in this country, is grieving today. Policing is a big family of people who know at some point they may be asked to make the ultimate sacrifice. But you never wish or hope that it actually happens. And tonight this tragedy did. There's some broken hearts that will take a long time to grieve, to accept this.
Good afternoon. This is Daniel here with Cops and Cons TV. Want to say thank you for joining us. And that was a video that was produced by the Chicago Police Department that we wanted to start with today. And actually, that's what we're going to get into first. So there was a police officer in Chicago who just died, as you just saw in the video. He was 32 years old. He had 5 years on the department. His name is Andres Vasquez Lasso. A little bit about what happened. So here's the information that we know, is that police officers in Chicago's southwest side near Gage Park were dispatched to a call for service. It was a domestic violence type disturbance call. Once officers got there, there was a male offender, a subject who was chasing a female with a gun. Police officer Lasso was dispatched to the call. He arrived on scene. He saw all this, and what he did is he did engage in a foot chase after the suspect. As he was chasing after the 18-year-old suspect, the 18-year-old suspect turned around pretty quickly and just about at very close range did fire shots at the police officer, and he tragically died. However, before he died, he was able to get off a couple rounds of his own, and he did shoot and wound the offender one time. He shot him in the head. However, the individual did not die. He did suffer some injuries, obviously, and he's in the hospital right now. The individual is being charged with first-degree murder. It shouldn't be surprising to anyone that this 18-year-old who's going to not only get into a domestic violence incident, cause a disturbance, be armed with a firearm, that he also has a long criminal history. So some of the things in his criminal history were auto theft, running from police, and resisting arrest. He's able to accomplish all of these crimes by the age of 18. So he's currently being charged with first-degree murder. It's an absolute tragic thing. Anytime we lose a police officer in the line of duty, but that is what happened in Chicago. And we are currently working on video. We're going to have the video up for everybody here in a second. Want to thank everyone for being a part of our being a part of our show today. Thank you, Officer Blue Gun. Appreciate that. Thank you all for being a part of our show today. If you have any questions about any of the cases that I'm going through, or if you have a different opinion about some of these cases that I'm going to be talking about. And we do have some controversial cases to go over this week. There's at least 3 other cases that we're going to talk about, and each one is controversial on its own, and there's a lot to some of these cases. So we're going to get into it here, and just make sure, if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel, Cops and Cons TV, and share it with friends and family. We love as many people as possible to be a part of the show, and we're going to get the video up here in a second for everyone, so just hang on a second. And like I said, we're going to get into some of these other stories, but I know I've mentioned it before that I'm from the south side of Chicago. I'm from only a couple miles west of where this officer-involved shooting in Chicago occurred. A lot of my friends back home in Chicago are Chicago police officers, and it's a real hard time for them right now when something like this happens. So I'm just curious if anyone has any other comments or anything on that case. And yeah, kind of while we're waiting for the video to go up, let's see where everybody's from. Looks like Steve Ladner. Can we ask real questions, Steve? Good afternoon. You can ask whatever you want. Me and Steve go back and forth on comments throughout the week, so it's good to see you, Steve. We don't always agree, but that is okay as long as we have the discussion. That's really what's important. But yeah, go ahead, Steve. Ask anything you want, and we'll go ahead and discuss some of these really important issues. When it comes to policing and crime and law enforcement, I mean, it's okay to have different opinions. Like that isn't the problem. It's good to have different opinions and to debate those opinions. My heartache is when people have opinions that aren't based in fact, and I guess my thing is like I like the debate and the discussion. So if we can't agree on what the underlying facts are, then how can we ever have a discussion about it? So yeah, Steve, definitely put in there whatever you want. Looks like we have a couple people. Oh, let's see, we got Kyle from El Paso, Texas. Welcome. And let's see, we've got... Yeah, Shaquille Oatmeal is probably the best name in here. Absolutely. I know we have someone from Florida, someone from Tennessee, and yeah, welcome everyone. And we have someone from Oklahoma as well. Hello, Maria. All right, so the first case that we're gonna talk about, and definitely put any questions in there as we're getting this video up. The first case that I want to talk about is the Linda Edwards case in Knoxville, Tennessee. I think that someone said that they were from Knoxville. They're not from Knoxville, but from Tennessee. So we are going to talk about this case. So this Linda Edwards case, I mean, this is an absolute tragic case. It's just an absolute terrible thing. It's kind of been in the newspapers everywhere. All the different channels have covered it. But here's what this case was. So this happened on February 4th, and it's a woman. She's wheelchair bound because she did suffer a prior stroke. Oh, hang on. Before we get that case, let's see what Steve has to say. Let's see. Oh, goodness. Steve Ladner, what do you think about police literally robbing citizens and armored cars? Okay, so, all right, Steve. I'm not sure what you mean about robbing citizens and armored cars. I'm not sure what that means either. You mean armored cars for police officers, for like bring security? When we talk about people robbing citizens, you might be talking about civil asset forfeiture. So let's talk about that. Let's pretend that's what Steve is asking about. So civil asset forfeiture is essentially when during a criminal investigation, not only do police officers charge people with crimes, but they also physically take people's property. So this is done a lot of times if someone is involved if someone is arrested for drugs, then a lot of times police officers are able to seize some of the assets that are related or connected to that criminal activity. So in general, I'm not crazy about civil asset forfeiture. I don't always think it is a good idea. But the problem is, and here's where I think the problem is, and here's where I like to, that's what Steve's talking about. Good, I'm glad I was on the right track there, Steve. So here's what I think about when it comes to civil asset forfeiture, and just to be as transparent as I can be, I'm not a fan either. I would prefer that police departments not do it, but here's where my heartache is. Blaming police officers for civil asset forfeiture, I'm going to be honest, I think it's wrong track, and here's why. The reason is because civil asset forfeiture is a lot of times, when it comes to federal agencies, it's federal law. And when it comes to cities and state police and counties, it's state law or city ordinance that's followed. So essentially, police officers, not only do they have to follow those laws, but there's also department policies. Most departments have policies that say you will follow this civil asset forfeiture law. And police officers, so individual police officers on the street, they literally don't have a choice. So I'm not saying that it's so if police officers don't follow these laws, a lot of times they can be disciplined or fired. Now you can make the argument, well, if it's immoral, police officers shouldn't do it. But again, if it's the law and police officers have to follow the law, I don't know what you expect individual police officers to do. So I think when it comes to civil asset forfeiture, if you're criticizing individual police officers on the street, but you're not criticizing people who manage police departments and who literally write the policy, or lawmakers who literally write these laws for police officers to follow, I think that isn't really honest. Officer Blue Gun says, don't hate the player, hate the game. That is absolutely 100% Officer Blue Gun. So blaming individual police officers on the street who literally not only do they have to follow department policy, but they also have to follow what the law is. So if you really want this to change when it comes to civil asset forfeiture, you have to change the laws. And again, I'm not crazy about civil asset forfeiture. It's not something that I'm a fan of. I wish that it would go away pretty much in every single case. But again, blaming police officers on the street who have to follow these laws, it seems like a strange place to put blame. Now, I always talk about dishonest criticism. So a lot of people come into these different scenarios and incidents and situations with they have in their mind, I'm going to be irritated and criticize police officers no matter what the police officers do. Well, if that's your goal, then fine. Then blame the police officers for civil asset forfeiture. But if your goal is, hey, this is a bad policy, this is a bad law, how do we fix this and make it better for the future? Well, then you don't start at the bottom with the police officers who, again, literally don't have a choice when it comes to following the law, but it's the people who... It's the, hey, JF, well, yeah, we're getting the video up now. We're getting it fixed. So hang on. We will be there in a second. But it's literally the, I believe we're coming up here in a second. It's literally the people who write the law. And the people who run police departments with their policy, that's who should be blamed. That's where the long-term fix of this is. So, Steve, I don't know if I answered your question, but that's how I feel about civil asset forfeiture. I don't like it either, but blaming individual police officers is a really strange place to put blame. This is completely on policymakers and lawmakers. So back to the Linda Edwards case. So this was in Knoxville, Texas. On 2/4 of this year, she flew from her nursing home in Rhode Island, and while she was on the flight, she had some abdominal pain, complaints of pain. So once it landed in Knoxville, Tennessee, she went to Blunt Memorial Hospital. She was there. They diagnosed her with nothing serious, and she was discharged. After that, she went to Fort Sanders Hospital, and this is where the incident occurred. So when she was at Fort Sanders Hospital, she basically complained of this abdominal pain, and the hospital staff told her that she was fine, that she didn't have any problems, that there wasn't anything they needed to admit her for, and they discharged her. Well, Linda Edwards, didn't agree. She honestly thought that there was something wrong, so she did what, you would think a lot of people would do when they honestly believe they have a medical problem. They're at an emergency department, and they're not getting the help or treatment. She refused to leave. She basically said, I'm not leaving. I'm sick. I have these issues. I am 100% leaving. Yes. So no, we are getting the hey, Martin Driver. Yeah, we usually have video. We're getting the video up. It's technical issues, but the video is being fixed. It'll be up here in a few, so stick with us. So she essentially refused to leave. So security, the hospital staff had security deal with her, and she wouldn't leave with security. She then they called police officers. And so police officers get there, and basically here's what police officers are being told. Police officers are being told, hey, this woman was discharged, so she has no medical issues, and she's refusing to leave. She's criminal trespassing. We want her out of here. So what the police officers do is, I have a lot of issues with what the police officers do, but essentially they try to convince her to leave, and she refuses. After so long of a time, she the police officers decide to place her under arrest for criminal trespass. Now, during all of this, and it goes on for like an hour, she's telling them that she feels like she can't breathe. She feels like she's going to die. She says she thinks she's having a stroke. And, you know, the police officers are basically reiterating what the medical staff just told them. I mean, it's not like they're out in the middle of a park or anywhere strange. They're literally in the parking lot of the hospital, right? So, you know, then the medical staff at some point does come out on scene, and the medical staff is telling them, hey, there's nothing wrong with her. She's been discharged and she's refusing to leave. So eventually the police officers decide to place her under arrest. Well, they arrest her while she's in custody. She dies of a stroke. And so it turns out she did have some medical issues going on that weren't diagnosed. Now, it's impossible to know whether or not, you know, she had that while she was at the hospital or if it developed later. But either way, she did die in police custody, and there is just a lot of criticism, not only on the hospital, but there's a lot of criticism on police. And you know what? Some of that criticism, I'll say a lot of that criticism is warranted. Let me get into the specifics here a little bit. So, you know, when police first arrived on scene, almost immediately what they... you know what? Hey, so we're going to come back on here in a few, and we'll have the video feed up. So why don't you give us a few minutes, and we'll be right back on. What happened?